I stood outside Bella Vista that night, staring through the glass windows at my family inside. The warm glow of candlelight, the sound of laughter drifting out each time the door opened. My father sat at the head of the table, my mother beside him, and my brother Daniel across from them in his perfectly tailored suit. It was supposed to be a celebration. Daniel had just been promoted to regional director at his law firm, and this dinner was his moment. I adjusted my simple button-down shirt, suddenly aware of how plain I looked compared to my successful older brother. A flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Should I even go in? But I pushed it away. This was family. We were supposed to be there for each other. I took a breath, pushed open that door, and walked straight into the night that would end everything. Before I tell you what happened that night, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you have ever felt like the black sheep in your family, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear how this story ends. Because what my father said to me that night, it broke something. But what I did next, that changed everything. Let me take you back to where it all started. I slid into my seat at the table, greeting everyone with forced brightness. The restaurant was everything you would expect from a high-end Italian place in downtown Chicago. Bella Vista specialized in the kind of atmosphere where soft piano music floated through the air and candlelight flickered across white tablecloths. The wine list alone probably cost more than my monthly rent. My father, Richard, sat with the posture of a man who had spent 40 years as a civil engineer, every movement calculated and precise. At 62, he still commanded attention without raising his voice. My mother, Carol, had that gentle warmth of a retired elementary school teacher, but her warmth always seemed to orbit my father's opinions. And then there was Daniel, 7 years older than me, at 35, looking every bit the successful attorney in his charcoal gray suit that probably cost $3,000. The energy around the table felt celebratory. Daniel was beaming as he accepted congratulations from our parents. I genuinely felt happy for him. I reached over and hugged my brother, told him I was proud. Because I was. Daniel had worked hard to get where he was. The fact that I felt inadequate sitting next to him was my problem, not his. I let my mind drift back to our childhood for a moment. Daniel had always been the golden child. Straight A, student captain of the debate team, varsity tennis player. He got into Harvard Law School on a full scholarship. Meanwhile, I was the kid who preferred art classes and creative writing workshops. I did fine in school, nothing spectacular, but I found my passion in words and stories. After college, I chose to become a freelance writer and content creator. It was not the traditional path, and my father never let me forget it. I remembered my college graduation. Daniel had flown in from Boston, but my father claimed he had an important meeting he could not miss. When I won a regional journalism award 2 years ago, my father had simply nodded and said that is nice before changing the subject. But when Daniel made partner at his firm, my father threw a party that lasted until 2 in the morning. I stopped seeking his approval years ago. Or at least I told myself I did. The appetizers arrived, and the conversation naturally centered on Daniel's achievements. My father launched into a detailed account of the case. Daniel had just won some complex corporate litigation that had brought in millions for the firm. He talked about the promotion, how Daniel would now oversee 50 attorneys across 3 offices. He mentioned the house Daniel had just bought in Lincoln Park, one of Chicago's most expensive neighborhoods. He even brought up Catherine Daniel's fiancée and how lucky Daniel was to have found such an accomplished woman from such a respected family. My mother chimed in with her own praise, her eyes shining with pride. "We are so proud, Daniel. You have made something of yourself." I sat there, listening, genuinely trying to be happy for my brother. I added comments here and there, but they seemed to evaporate into the air unheard. When I mentioned that I had just completed a 6-month content marketing campaign for a promising tech startup, my father gave me that obligatory nod. "That is interesting," he said before, immediately turning back to Daniel to ask about wedding plans. I felt that familiar twist in my stomach, that old childhood feeling of being invisible. But I reminded myself, this is Daniel's night. Let him have it. I could be the bigger person. I could sit through one dinner without making it about me. The main course arrived, and my father ordered an expensive bottle of wine. While we waited for it, he turned to me with what I thought might be genuine interest. "So, Jason, you still doing that writing thing?" The way he said it, writing thing, like it was a hobby I should have outgrown. Like I was still playing with toy cars in the basement. "Yes, Dad. It is going well, actually. I just signed a 6-month contract." I tried to keep my voice steady, professional. "6 months. That is short term," he replied, his tone making it clear what he thought of short-term anything. I felt my jaw tighten, but I forced myself to stay calm. Daniel tried to intervene. "Dad, Jason is doing fine." My father nodded, but his eyes told a different story. They said disappointment. They said failure. They said you are not enough. I should have left right then. But I did not. I stayed. And that was my mistake. The wine arrived, and my father made a show of tasting it, approving it, having the server pour for everyone. Everyone except me. I had to reach for the bottle and pour my own glass. It was a small thing, barely noticeable, but it felt symbolic somehow. My father continued talking about Daniel, about how my brother had understood early on what it takes to succeed in this world. "Not everyone has that vision," he said, and his eyes flicked toward me when he said it. Not everyone. I bit the inside of my cheek and said nothing. My mother tried to change the subject, asking about dessert options, but my father waved her off. "I am just being honest," he said. Daniel looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. "Dad, come on," he muttered, but it was too quiet too late. Then my father turned his attention fully to me. It started with questions. "Do you have savings? Jason, health insurance? A retirement plan?" Each question felt like a small cut. I answered briefly, keeping my responses short. My father shook his head after each one. "You are almost 30. You should have stability by now." "I am 28, Dad, and I am doing okay." The words came out more defensive than I intended. "Okay is not enough. Look at your brother," he said, gesturing toward Daniel like he was a museum exhibit of success. My anger started to rise hot and insistent, but I pushed it down. My mother put her hand on mine. "Your father just wants the best for you," she said softly. "I know, Mom," I replied. But I did not know. This was not concern. This was something else. This was contempt. Daniel tried again to redirect the conversation. "Dad, Jason has his own path. It is working for him." My father looked at Daniel, then back at me. "Is it really?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I said nothing. What could I say? That I was happy? That I felt fulfilled? Would he even believe me? The truth was, I had been happy. Until tonight. Until this moment, when I realized that no matter what I did, no matter what I achieved, it would never be enough for the man sitting across from me. Dessert arrived. The server placed a chocolate torte in the center of the table with 4 small plates. Nobody moved to serve themselves. The tension had killed everyone's appetite. My father pushed his chair back and stood. He picked up his wine glass. The restaurant seemed to grow quieter, or maybe it was just my perception. Everything felt slow, heavy, like moving through water. "I want to make a toast tonight," my father announced. My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming. I could feel it. "To my son Daniel. You have made me proud in ways I never imagined." He paused, looking around the table. His eyes landed on me and stayed there. "You worked hard. You stayed focused. You became someone." I felt my hands grip the edge of the table. Became someone. The implication was clear. "And I want to thank your brother, too." My head snapped up. Was he actually going to say something kind? My father raised his glass higher, his eyes boring into mine. "Thank you, Jason, for staying where you belong." Time stopped. I could not breathe. The words echoed in my head, bouncing off the inside of my skull. "Staying where you belong." He continued, "Someone has to be the cautionary tale, right?" He laughed. It was not a cruel laugh, which somehow made it worse. It was casual, dismissive, like he was commenting on the weather. Daniel dropped his glass back to the table with a thud. "Dad, that is not funny." My mother looked stricken. "Richard?" she whispered. My father shrugged. "What I am, just being realistic. Not everyone can be a success." The restaurant noise faded away. I heard nothing but my own heartbeat. I looked at my father and saw no apology in his eyes, no regret, no recognition of what he had just done. Just that same look he had given me my whole life. The look that said I was less than. The look that said I did not measure up. The look that said I would never be enough. I sat there in absolute silence. I did not yell. I did not argue. I did not make a scene. Instead, something cold and clear settled over me. A realization. My father would never respect me. All those years of trying to prove myself, trying to earn his approval, trying to be good enough. It had all been pointless. I set my wine glass down carefully. Daniel leaned toward me. "Jason, I am sorry. Dad did not mean it." I held up my hand to stop him. "It is fine," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat. Empty. But it was not fine. Something broke inside me that night. Not my heart, that had been chipped away for years. What broke was the last thread of obligation I felt to this family. I raised my hand and caught the attention of our server. "Can I have the check, please?" My father's eyebrows shot up. "What are you doing?" I looked at him calmly. "Paying for dinner?" "I was going to take care of it," he said. "No. I have got it." My voice was steady, controlled. There was power in that control. Daniel tried to protest. "Jason, you do not have to do this." I smiled, but it did not reach my eyes. "I want to." The server returned with the leather folder. I opened it. $347. It was more than I had planned to spend this month on anything. It would set me back. But I did not hesitate. I pulled out my credit card and handed it over. My father watched me, confusion crossing his face. My mother looked worried. "Jason, honey," she started. But I was already standing, putting on my jacket. "Thank you for dinner. And for the clarity." The words came out sharp and clean. Daniel stood up quickly. "Where are you going home?" "I have a phone call to make." I turned and walked toward the exit. I heard Daniel call my name, but I did not stop. I pushed through the door and out into the November night. The Chicago wind hit me like a wall. It was bitter cold, the kind that cuts through your clothes and finds your bones. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard, watching my breath form clouds in the frigid air. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, from everything, from rage, from relief, from the terrifying freedom of a decision not yet made but already forming. I pulled out my phone. The screen glowed in the darkness. I stared at it for a long moment. Do I really want to do this? This will change everything. But what have I got to lose? I thought about my father's face. I thought about those words. Staying where you belong. I thought about 28 years of being second best, of being the disappointment, of being not enough. Enough. I scrolled through my contacts and found the name I was looking for. Douglas Sterling. 2 months ago, Douglas had offered me a job. He was a self-made entrepreneur who had built Sterling Media Group from nothing into a multi-million-dollar content marketing firm. He had seen some of my work and reached out. He wanted me as his content director. The salary was $120,000 a year. It was more money than I had ever made. But there was a catch. The job was in New York City. At the time, I had turned him down. I told him I wanted to stay close to family. I was afraid of the risk. My father had said startups fail all the time, better to play it safe. Douglas had been understanding. The offer is open for 3 months, he had said. Think about it. That conversation had been 8 weeks ago. I still had time. I pressed call before I could change my mind. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then Douglas picked up. Jason, I was not expecting to hear from you. His voice was warm but curious. Is the offer still on the table? I asked. There was a pause. The content director position? Yes. Another pause. It is. But I need someone who is all in, Jason. No hesitation, no second thoughts. I looked up at the Chicago skyline. The buildings rose into the dark sky, blocking out the stars. I had lived in this city my entire life. I knew every neighborhood, every shortcut, every good coffee shop. This was home, or it had been. I am all in, I said. When do I start? I heard Douglas laugh, surprised and pleased. How about January 2nd? That gives you time to wrap things up in Chicago. Perfect. Welcome to Sterling Media, Jason. You will not regret this. I know, I said, and I meant it. The call ended. I stood there on that freezing sidewalk, and for the first time in hours, I felt calm. Not happy, not excited, just calm. Like I had been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. I had just made the biggest decision of my life in less than 5 minutes. No pros and cons list. No asking for advice. No seeking anyone's approval. I just did it. And it felt right. I walked back to my apartment, a small studio in Wicker Park. It was not much, but it was mine. I looked around at my life boxed into 400 square feet. My desk by the window where I wrote. My bookshelf crammed with novels and reference books. My secondhand couch. My life was small, but it was honest. And now, it was about to change. I spent the next few weeks preparing in silence. I found an apartment in Brooklyn through a virtual tour, a 1-bedroom, with exposed brick and better light than my Chicago place. I paid the deposit. I hired movers. I notified my current clients that I would be relocating, but would continue to work with them remotely. Most were understanding. A few were even excited for me. I avoided my family's calls and messages. My father called once. "We need to talk about what happened." His voicemail said. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Daniel texted multiple times. "Call me when you are ready." I finally responded with 2 words. "I am fine." My mother sent a long email about how one bad night should not ruin our family. I did not reply. I was not trying to be cruel. I just had nothing to say. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Thanksgiving came 2 weeks after that dinner. It was the first Thanksgiving I had ever missed. My mother called that morning. "Jason, please come home. Your father feels terrible." "Does he?" I asked. "Or does he just feel embarrassed?" She did not answer. "I am not coming, Mom. I have plans." I did not have plans. I ate Thanksgiving dinner alone at a small Vietnamese restaurant that stayed open for the holiday. I had pho and spring rolls. I was not sad. I was not lonely. I was just there in that moment, at peace with my decision. This was the first step toward being free. January 2nd arrived faster than I expected. I stood in the lobby of Sterling Media Group's Manhattan office, 32 floors above the city streets. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Central Park, still dusted with snow from a storm the night before. The office was modern open concept, with glass-walled conference rooms and standing desks. It looked nothing like the cramped, dated offices I had worked in before. Douglas met me at reception. He was in his mid-40s, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. No pretense, no unnecessary formality. "Welcome to the team," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Let me introduce you to everyone." He walked me through the space, introducing me to designers, writers, strategists, account managers. The team was young, energetic, diverse. Everyone seemed genuinely excited about their work. Nobody asked where I went to school. Nobody asked about my family. They asked about my ideas, my experience, my vision for content strategy. It was refreshing. My first week was intense. I was thrown into projects immediately. A rebrand for a sustainable fashion startup, a content overhaul for a fintech company, a social media strategy for a health and wellness app. I worked 12-hour days, but they did not feel like work. They felt like possibility. I started to remember why I loved this field in the first place. The challenge of finding the right words. The satisfaction of a campaign that resonated. The creative collaboration with talented people who respected my input. Nobody at Sterling Media said I was not good enough. Nobody compared me to anyone else. Nobody made me feel small. It was strange at first, almost disorienting, to work in an environment where I was valued. But I adjusted quickly. I found my rhythm. I found my confidence. By March, I had launched my first major campaign for the company. We were promoting a new app that helped people find local experiences in their cities. I developed a storytelling approach that focused on real users and authentic moments. We created video content, blog posts, social media campaigns, all centered around the idea that the best adventures are the ones you do not plan. The campaign went viral. We hit 2 million impressions in the first week. Local news outlets picked up the story. The app's downloads increased by 300%. Douglas called me into his office. "This is exactly what we needed," he said, grinning. "You have got instincts, Jason. Trust them." By June, he gave me a raise. By September, I was promoted to senior director. I was leading a team of 8 people. I was making strategic decisions that affected the entire company. I was succeeding not because of my last name or my connections, but because of my work, because of me. I did not tell my family any of this. Daniel texted occasionally, and I responded politely, but kept the conversation surface level. How is New York? It is good. How is work busy? How are you? Fine. My mother called every Sunday, like clockwork. I answered, listened to updates about neighbors and her book club and the weather, but I did not share much about my life. She knew I was working. She knew I was alive. That was enough. My father never reached out, not once, and I was fine with that. Christmas approached. On December 24th, my phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Jason, can we talk? Sure, I said. There was a long pause. Dad is asking about you. What does he want? He wants to apologize. I stared out my apartment window at the Brooklyn streets below, at the holiday lights strung up on brownstone stoops. Will you come home for Christmas? No. Jason, please. I have moved on, Daniel, and that is okay. My brother sighed a heavy sound. I miss you. I miss you too, I said honestly, but I do not miss who I was when I was there. The line went quiet for a moment. I understand, Daniel finally said. Do you? I asked. I think so, he replied. We hung up shortly after. I spent Christmas Day walking through Prospect Park. The paths were quiet, covered in fresh snow. Families were out, building snowmen, kids sledding down small hills, couples walking hand in hand. I watched them all with a strange sense of contentment. I was alone, but I was not lonely. There was a difference. I had chosen this. I had chosen myself. And that choice had led me here to this new life, this new version of who I could be. A year had passed since that dinner. 365 days since my father raised his glass and told me to stay where I belonged. I thought about that moment often, but it did not hurt anymore. It just was. A thing that happened. A catalyst. I did not hate my father. Hate required too much energy, too much engagement. I had simply let go. I had released the need for his approval, for his validation, for his love. Maybe that made me cold. Maybe that made me damaged. But it also made me free. I stood on my apartment balcony that night, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The buildings were lit up like a constellation, each window a tiny world. Somewhere in one of those buildings, someone was probably sitting at a family dinner, feeling exactly like I had felt a year ago. Feeling small, feeling invisible, feeling not enough. I wished I could tell them what I learned. I wished I could tell them that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away. Not with anger, not with drama, just with quiet certainty that you deserve better. I thought about my father's toast. Thank you for staying where you belong. He thought he was insulting me. He thought he was putting me in my place. But what he actually did was set me free. He showed me that I did not need his permission to build the life I wanted. I did not need his blessing. I did not need him at all. I paid that bill. $347. The most expensive and most valuable meal I had ever purchased. I walked out of that restaurant and into my own life. I made one phone call that changed everything. My father raised his glass that night to toast my failure. But what he did not know was he was toasting my freedom. I paid that bill. I walked out. I made that call. And I never looked back. Sometimes the best thing family can give you is a reason to leave. And that is not abandonment. That is survival. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a moment that forced you to choose yourself over family expectations? Drop your story in the comments. I would love to hear it. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. subscribe to this channel for more real stories about navigating difficult family dynamics, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that it is okay to choose themselves. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find the courage to write your own. Take care of yourself out there. You deserve it.